Hello, everyone. In this screencast, I am going to be providing an overview of your second blog post for your juvenile justice Google site. So in this one, whereas last week you were doing a general overview of the topic and the historical context, this week you're going to be diving more into formulating your own opinion. So again, this is your second blog post in which you're going to provide your own opinion. And just like last week, I have a suggested outline for you here. So whereas last week was 2 paragraphs, this week is 3 paragraphs in total. So your first body paragraph, you're going to briefly revisit the basic context about the topic, making sure that you do this to shine light on your opinion. But the reason that we're having you do this is because in a blog format, as that form of writing, it's not necessarily linear in the sense of a book, right? That your reader could just go back to the previous page. Blogs, we kind of have to remind them what they read, because if I was a follower of this blog, for example, it had been a week since I read your previous post. So you're just providing a brief context, right? What are we talking about again? I need a quick refresher. What's juvenile justice? What's like the issue? A sentence or two. Then you're really going to dive into your thesis statement. So for your thesis, it's an opinion. So remember, when we do an opinion as our thesis, we're allowed to use the pronouns I, me, and my, because this is your thought process, right? I want to know, what do you think? I feel, I believe, I argue, right? Because, and also with the blog post, it's a different form of writing as, say, a formal academic essay in which you would need to adopt a more objective tone. So your thesis statement, what you should be addressing is, should juveniles be tried as adults, or when juveniles should be tried as adults, and should juveniles receive life sentences without the chance of parole? This is really what it's boiling down to and what we've been discussing throughout this unit. Is it fair to even consider a juvenile having a life sentence or an adult sentence? What fundamentally makes them juveniles? Or do you think it's more of a gray area and it can't be that clear cut? Think back to some of the op-eds that we have written, right? It is not, you don't have to necessarily 100% take one side or the other. If you feel that there's a gray area, that's fine, but you need to be able to explicitly explain it within your thesis. So again, your thesis should be adopting or addressing these 2 questions. Should juveniles be tried as adults? And should juveniles receive life sentences without the possibility or the chance of parole? Because remember, it says in the 2016 Supreme Court case that juveniles can receive life sentences without parole if they show permanent incorrigibility, or that they show, in a sense, that they can't be rehabilitated through therapy or counseling to re-enter society. But do you think that's fair? Do you think that it shouldn't happen at all? Do you think, or maybe you think we are being too lenient, right? Maybe you think we're being too lenient in terms of how we're trying juveniles. Say if they're 15 or 16, do you think they have the same cognitive ability as adults and therefore should be tried as adults because by that time they feel they know better? Wherever you lean on the issue, you must make sure that your thesis clearly states your opinion and highlights at least 2 key points that you will expand upon in your upcoming paragraphs. And the reason I'm saying at least 2 is you have 2 body paragraphs following this intro paragraph. So you could explore reason number 1 in this paragraph, and then reason number 2 in body paragraph number 3. So again, wherever you line, make sure you introduce at least 2 key points or reasons that you will justify throughout the other 2 paragraphs of your blog post. So after your intro and stating your thesis, you're going to move to body paragraph number 1, in which you will elaborate upon the first reason why you feel your argument is correct. So here you should provide at least 2 pieces of textual evidence or quotes explaining each quote's significance and ultimately revealing how this evidence supports your thesis or argument. Remember, we need to tie that textual evidence back to your thesis statement. If there isn't a clear tie, right? This piece of evidence shows that juveniles are cognitively underdeveloped and therefore should not be tried as adults. And while they're juveniles because their prefrontal cortex is underdeveloped. That shows that clear line of your argument. You need to build that bridge between your evidence and your thesis. If you don't, that evidence falls flat. You're providing a fact, but it's just like, cool, right? So make sure you are tying that explicitly back to your thesis. This supports my opinion because. And then with your body paragraph number 3, same idea here, rinse and repeat, but you're going to be providing your second argument in this paragraph, or I'm sorry, your second reason in this paragraph. And once again, you are providing 2 pieces of textual evidence. You need to explain each quote's significance, right? What does this quote mean? This quote shows that juveniles' prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed until the age of 25. And then why does that, like, so what, right? So what, it shows that. This is important because, again, same example, it's important because it shows that the prefrontal cortex, which is in charge of decision-making, is physically underdeveloped. And because this can be cited from neuroscience, it is therefore unfair or should be considered cruel and unusual punishment to try juveniles as adults if they are fundamentally, biologically, physiologically, and cognitively underdeveloped when compared to adults. Whereas this last body paragraph, so you're not going to be having a concluding paragraph for this blog post. You're instead just going to provide a summarizing sentence or two to leave your audience contemplating their own opinions or feeling affirmed or like supported or aligning with your thoughts, right? So instead of having a concluding paragraph, think of it as having a concluding sentence or two. So again, in total, 3 paragraphs. Body paragraph number 1 is your intro with your thesis and 2 key points. Body paragraph 2, first reason, 2 pieces of textual evidence. Body paragraph number 3, second reason, 2 pieces of textual evidence. In terms of the logistic requirements, so like I said, 3 detailed paragraphs, and these should be about 5 to 8 sentences each. You will need to use 4 quotes in total from at least 2 sources, but I want to point out you may not use the same quotes as you did in blog number 1. For obvious reasons, then you're just reiterating the same assignment or the same work, whereas you can revisit one of the same sources, but you may not use one of the same quotes. That brings me to the next point. You can only use one of the same sources that you used in blog number 1. So I'll go over the sources you can use in this blog, but you can only use one. Do not use both of the same sources. I want to make sure that you are looking at other sources and pulling citations and opinions and facts from multiple sources rather than having tunnel vision and focusing on just one. Just like your last blog post, we need a beautiful little picture or a video here embedded in your post that adds imagery or provides an overview of your topic. Again, obviously, don't use the same photo or video. And then, just like last week, an MLA Works Cited page, or I'm sorry, section below. As you see here, underneath the logistics, here are your sources in MLA format. So look at the ones. This is your juvenile injustice, on punishment in teen killers. Here is the podcast. If you want to use the podcast as a source, you are more than welcome to. And here is the juvenile life without parole assignment here. So whichever ones you use, remember, you can only use one of the same sources you already used, but you are welcome to use one of them and then a new one that you haven't yet touched upon. So there are 4 here. So there should be at least one you have not yet used. And then again, if you need to revisit the submission requirements, take a look at this screencast. It'll walk you through that process. And of course, the screencast of how to embed a picture or video in case you forgot or are unsure how to do that. So again, 3 paragraphs, a total of 4 quotes each. You may not use any of the same quotes that you used in the previous blog post, and you can only use one of the same sources from blog number 1. And then when you're ready to submit that, you'll follow the screencast instructions here and submit the link to your published Google site. If you have any questions, of course, email us to let us know. Thanks.